Do I hit got it?
Yeah, you got it. And we've got attendees starting to come in and register for their connecting to the link. So we'll give that a minute as people start to come on.
Okay.
And I'll get started and just say welcome. Thank you for joining us on Chebacco Chats, which is our weekly conversation with historians and authors and different people who have lots of perspectives on the history and significance of things here on MDI. This is season 4, and this is the second half of the season, and we're on episode 12. And I'm excited to be talking with Joy Lyons, who is our gardener at our Somesville campus. Chebacco Chats uses a webinar format, so if you'd like to ask questions or you have anything you'd like to contribute, you can either use the chat button down on your menu bar or the question and answer feature, and we'll see those pop up and we'll be able to answer your question at the end of our talk this afternoon. So you can see and hear us, but we cannot see and hear you. So just make sure you use those chat or question and answer features. We are recording this session, and Chebacco Chats are available on our website and through our YouTube channel 1 week after airing. So you're always welcome to go back and look at this again or share it with other people. As I mentioned, we're talking with Joy Lyons today, the longtime gardener for the Heirloom Gardens on our Somesville campus. These gardens were established in 2004 under the leadership of Charlotte Singleton. And she, I just want to note, very unfortunately passed away recently. And so she's credited with being a transformational influence here at the MDI Historical Society, and someone we will miss greatly. And these gardens especially are a tribute to the way that she's helped transform our organization. She was the director at the society in 2004 at the time, and her vision for the gardens were to plant species that would have been common in island gardens in the 18th and 19th centuries. She worked with the Bar Harbor Garden Club and a series of volunteers, including Jim Perkins, Sherry Ropinian, and Dick Crawford. And they together built 2 of the crescent beds on the sides of the main entrance to the museum grounds, and then the bed you can see here behind the spinner in front of the building itself. They really were focused on making this an heirloom garden, and so they collected plants from all over New England, especially going into Vermont, to be able to find those early species that people would have had in their gardens here on the island. Some of their initial goals for the garden it would be an educational space for people to gather and learn about these traditional plants, but also be a place for distribution of seeds to people if they wanted to grow some of the gardens in their own spaces and in their own houses. And I'm really grateful for Betty Crawford for bringing this information to my attention, because we didn't necessarily know how the gardens were established and those original goals for the gardens. So I'm really grateful to have this background. After the plants were installed in the garden, the Bar Harbor Garden Club, who was instrumental in helping with the installation and the design of the beds, volunteered for a period of time to help maintain the gardens. But volunteerism was really challenging to be able to maintain those gardens kind of as they needed throughout the full year, and especially throughout the day-to-day management of them in the spring, summer, and fall. And so we also relied on docents from the museum building to help with that. But over time, neither the docents or the garden club really had the amount of people and the time necessary to maintain the gardens in the ways that they deserved. And so eventually this task kind of became too overwhelming, and the gardens started to fall a little bit into disrepair or benign neglect. So the Historical Society in 2014 established a small endowment for its care, thanks to the Charles Butt Foundation. And this enabled us to hire a professional gardener for the first time. So Joy Lyons has been a private estate gardener for over 30 years and has worked with all aspects of garden design and maintenance. She also provides indoor floral design. She's been managing the Somesville Gardens since 2014. The gardens are these are the ones that surround the two museum buildings and the iconic bridge that are the most photographed places on the island. And that's thanks in large part to Joy's team and their careful management. So welcome, Joy.
Thank you, Raney, and hi to everybody. I'm happy to be here.
Great. So can you share a little bit about how you got involved with the gardens at Somesville?
Sure. So it was actually the fall of 2014 that Aaron Koff, who was the office manager, and Tim Garrity, who was the executive director of the Historical Society, approached me. And they first approached me wondering if I could work with the docents and sort of mentor them and show them the gardens and what could be done with them, and what was a weed and what wasn't a weed. And I realized, and this was late in the season, so the gardens were pretty well going past, but I could tell that after meeting with the docent that it would probably take more of my time to do that than if I just did it myself. However, I did offer to cut the gardens back that fall and put them to bed, neaten the grounds up. And that's how it started. And I really had a full schedule. So I wasn't sure I wanted to take on another project, but I had two ladies who came to help me put the gardens to bed that fall. And it just felt good being there. I had never been involved with a public garden before. I knew about this area because I lived close by, but I just didn't really spend a lot of time there. But we really enjoyed doing what we did that fall, and we approached Tim and Aaron, and they were excited to take us on. And we decided since we all had other jobs, that we would put in like at least 2, sometimes 3 hours a week, each of us, to maintain the gardens. And that's how it all began. And so we started, our real first season was 2015.
Great. I'm showing a few sort of before and after. So before, when those initial gardens were starting to be installed, and you can imagine how barren the campus would have been if it wasn't for those early gardens. And then here on the right-hand side, sort of that flourishing effort of time and tending that has really changed the space. So when you started in 2014, what kinds of things, or 2015, really for your full season, what kinds of things were you doing to really figure out what species were there, and how the plants had been arranged, and how to reinvigorate them and make sure that they were, able to thrive in those spaces?
Yeah, so when we first started that spring, we just decided to let the gardens see what was there, see what came up, because it was late when I looked at it in 2014, and just to, pay respect to what was there. We let the garden sort of be, and we tried to keep them weeded and maintained and managed as best we could. They had gotten very out of shape and unruly and very weedy. But there were some perennials mixed in. Yeah, we could see the good plants in there. There were a lot of plants from the field next door, the neighbor's field. And I remember having to tell my assistants once, if the plants in the field are in these beds, we should remove them, because, obviously they seeded in. And so what we did is we worked the first year, we just sort of saw what was there, but it was apparent to me that we had to do something, because they were hard to maintain, because they were so unorganized and out of shape. And, I like to plant more in big clumps of plants, so you can stake them and take care of them, rather than the way they were was just very, one of this and what, it was just sort of a it was pretty, but it was more like a field in the garden beds. And so what we did to reinvigorate them is we finally just got some tarps and we pulled all the clumps of plants out. And there are plants from the, I don't know if they're from the original plan, but they go way back. We kept as much as we could. And even in this picture, I see quite a few plants that were originally there. So we took all the plants out, and then we enriched the soil. We did a bit, we compost. I don't know when the last time the soil was enriched. So we added compost and fertilizers and got the soil in really good shape. And then I kind of replanted and redesigned in a more organized way that would make it easier for me and my team to manage, and I think is more pleasing to the eye and too.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
And as you're in there and you're sort of looking at those original plants and those designs and honoring, what all the work and the planning that had gone in initially, it sort of calls the question of, like, we call it an heirloom garden. What does an heirloom garden mean? What does that term refer to?
Yeah, so an heirloom garden, in my interpretation, is, I get, so I understand that the MDI Historical Society, just to keep with their mission, was to have the heirloom seeds from the people and the plants who preceded us. And so an heirloom is like an old-fashioned antique plant that it's open pollinated, so that when that plant is pollinated and it either reseeds or you collect the seed, it's going to come back true to the parent. Heirlooms, they go way back, like generations and generations. And I think of more heirlooms in the vegetable world, and a lot of people, different people from different generations like to share seed. They like to carry on those old strands of plants. Now we have a lot of hybridizing going on, and so I think the hybridizing was to make like plants that maybe have bigger, poofier flowers, or maybe are more vigorous. And there's a lot of the hybridizing goes way back too. And it is, truthfully, like, my hat goes off to the original planters who you said traveled all over New England to find these heirloom plants. And there are a lot of heirloom plants within the garden. And I kept most plants that came with the garden. And then of course I had to add. So there are a lot of heirlooms in there. I do find it a bit challenging sometimes to find heirloom plants at the local nurseries, but I do look for them. Like, for instance, purple coneflower, which is Echinacea purpurea, that is hybridized so much. It's hard to just get the straight. For years, I couldn't even get the straight species, and it's been hybridized to have like really doubled flowers, or even though it's purple cone, like orange flowers and red flowers and yellow varieties. And I have lately been finding some just straight purpurea. So I've been grabbing them to put in. And and I think, like, heirlooms, sometimes the flowers are smaller or more insignificant, but I find that they could be more fragrant. Like some of the old, like if you think of like the old roses, the old sweet peas, there's heliotrope. The old-fashioned heliotrope is much more fragrant than the newer varieties. But that's what I interpret as an heirloom.
Yeah. When Betty Crawford gave me some of the information about the formation of the garden, it included information with a few of the heirloom varieties that were originally installed. And I'm just curious, you mentioned that a lot of them are still here, but I'll list a few and you can let me know that there were a variety of colors of phlox, lady of the meadow, gooseneck, Parisian and Siberian catnip, Solomon seal, English cowslip, monk's hood, bee balm, and hollyhock. and that the arbor was installed with at the same time and had cup and saucer vine and moonflower. So you can
Yeah,
barely see the
so
arbor
I
in the
would
corner
say
over here.
3/4 of those plants that you just said are still in the garden. A few of them are not. And now the arbor has climbing hydrangea on it. I mean, now that I know that, because I just learned that today, I could grow some moonflower and the cup and saucer to keep it with the spirit of the heirloom.
Mhm. Nice, nice.
Yeah.
So the initial gardens were just right in front of the museum campus, but we've really now extended the experience of the gardens to so many other spaces. Can you talk a little bit about how you expanded these designs of these gardens and what changes you made to sort of the overall look and feel of the campus as a whole?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I was really fortunate that the bones of the garden were there. Like, I didn't have to do a lot with in the way of like structure of the garden, because the beds, the crescent beds were in front. They, people, there was the natural way to walk into them, and move around them, and the paths were there. In the back, Alan Parsons, I'm not sure when, but sometime before I was hired, he put in those great big beautiful stone steps that go down to the lower path, and he had planted some shrubs on the side, and also he had planted the Cornus cusa, the Japanese dogwood, and he kind of ended there when I started. And so when I looked at the back, it just seemed natural to just extend that shady garden, add more shade plants, and then also just extend it all the way across the back. And we kind of anchored it with a viburnum, and then just filled it with like lots of shady Karangashoma, Solomon sealed hostas, ginger, some ground covers like ginger and ajuga. And we just made a nice shady garden back there. And then when you go down the steps, we did enhance, there was a path there, but I feel like it wasn't in great shape. So we added some gravel, and we created a bed along the water's edge, which it was mostly the water's edge. It wasn't anything as far as a landscape goes. I mean, it was just kind of,
yeah, there's like kind of
it
an
was
early
just
picture
weedy,
here.
and we hired Devin O'Connor. I think his business is Garden Artisans now. And he helped like put in some really naturalize along the water there with azaleas and mosses and some Myrica Gale, and just naturalized ferns. And we kept things, kind of low so that it didn't block the beautiful stream. And then when you went over the bridge, this little selectman building didn't have any landscape to it. Had the plaque and some like coping stones of beautiful, and so we kind of worked around those. And I was happy to find some hydrangea arborescens, which is a straight species, old-fashioned hydrangea it is hard to find that at nurseries, but I came across some, so I picked up like 5 of those, and we really naturalized it over there with the hydrangeas and added some ferns and some huckleberry, native huckleberry. And on the left side of the walkway, when you come off the bridge and go up the steps, there's it's really sunny, so we put some blueberry, and trying to stay with like natives and more natural type plants for over there.
Nice. Yeah, that sort of leads into that next question of there are these different ecosystems on the campus, sunny and shady along the waterfront and the different buildings. How is, I mean, you've sort of already answered this question, but like, what is the experience in how you connect those different spaces to feel like one campus, and how you honor the different ecosystems that dictate what you can and can't do there?
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, I'm so fortunate that that area is just such a sweet oasis to just be a part of. So there's the borrowed landscape, the view across the street, the mill pond, the mountains, and then just the campus itself and the little stream. And, you know, another thing is, I don't know when the old slides don't show too many of the shrubs, but there's some great shrubs there that were there. I mean, I put in a few shrubs, but there's like there's a lilac tree, actually, not a shrub, but then there's some boxwood, and I did put in an enkianthus, but in the design to make it all cohesive, I like to like repeat either clumps of plants. I like to make big swaths of plant material and sort of repeat, whether I'm repeating plants or color, or even echo across to another bed, just to so your eye flows better. And then, you know, I like to keep with the natural landscape around. So, you know, as you go into the shady areas, just more, you know, you go out back and there's like textures, and it's more easier on the eye after coming from the sunny garden out front. And, you know, I like to design just in a way that when you flow, it just like it's easy on your eye. It's aesthetic. Nothing's like too poppy, especially with, you know, the view is so beautiful. Like, we don't want to take away from the view with some like crazy ornamental something, you know, like try to work with the nature that's there. And it's just beautiful there. So that made it kind of easy.
Yeah, I love that that compliment, because it is such a gorgeous location, and if you don't spend time there, you kind of forget, because it's such a hustle and bustle to go back and forth. And I know locals were always maybe going back and forth and not stopping at the garden, as you admitted you hadn't, and I hadn't either. But now that I spend time there, it is so peaceful and beautiful. And you and your team, and I'm sure this was true for the original volunteers too. I mean, this is one of the most photographed spots certainly on the island, and they claim within the state of Maine. So you're probably talking to visitors on the front lines day in and day out throughout the full season. What kinds of things do they tell you and your team about their experience there?
Yes, and being an estate gardener for so many years and never being involved with the public garden, that's like my favorite thing. Like, I really love being part of a garden that anybody can come see. You know, the estates are beautiful, I mean, no doubt, but you know, just that they get to see them and their families get to see them. And it's been so great to be able to share the museum garden with so many people, and we get so many compliments, but also people like to ask, you know, about certain plants, and then they like to share with like where they come from and what plants they grow or have issues with. And they also, I mean, the bridge is just always the big, you know, hot spot, and they love the bridge. And one question we get asked a lot is they want to know if we are volunteers, and you know, but yeah, they all just really love it. And we really love when like the school buses come and the children come for educational reasons with the Somes Maynol and Acadia National Park. So it's really fun to I mean, they're still coming now.
It's amazing.
Yes.
So we've added a few things, like here's the arbor. So that arbor was original to the 2004 design, but you know that we've changed that, or you've changed what's on there. We've added a couple of sculptural pieces to the garden in recognition of people who have been influential in the past. So what kinds of improvements would you like to see to the gardens moving forward? What are your goals for this space?
I mean, truthfully, a garden is like never done. I've learned over the 30 years, and you're always learning and wanting to improve things. You know, and some plants will outgrow their spot, or they might not work in a spot anymore because there's more shade, or they don't go with what's around them. But, you know, we always want to enhance the garden a little bit more. We're always looking for, oh, what can we do to make it better? But, you know, it's pretty good. And I also believe that sometimes less is more. Like, you don't want to do too much. And it's pretty sweet right now. But a couple of things that come to mind would be steps to the little selectman building, because when you go over the bridge, you just really have like a slanty grass, and the grass is pretty lean. It's a lot better than it was when we started over there, but it's a shady spot. It's a slope, and it would be really nice to put some steps. I think it would not only look better, it look more complete if there's steps going to the front to that building, but it would also be safer. You know, we have people come into the garden that might not be in hiking boots, you know, they might not have the right shoes on. And so that would be really nice. And I would like to be able to put more time into signs for the plants. I worked on that a little bit, but every year I wish I could do more, but I get caught up, you know, doing the maintenance, and I don't get to those things all the time. But I'm slowly trying to add more signage, because I know when I go to a public garden and I see a plant that I don't know, it's so nice when there is a sign. So those are some of the things that would be nice.
Nice. It's these conversations always go so fast. I would encourage anyone who is watching to go ahead, and if you have questions or comments, to put those in the chat now. As we start to wrap up, we can take a few minutes to answer any questions or share any.
Can I just say one more thing? I just wanted to make sure that a shout out to my team that helps me, because I couldn't do it without them. And it's definitely a group. And that's Betsy Minot on the left of me and Cindy Walker on the right. They're great. They love the garden. We all just love, we always joke that when we retire, this will be the only, we'll stay here, you know, as long as we can garden. And then Leo Chase, we had to switch up a few years in our lawn maintenance crew, and I brought Leo on. He was a colleague of mine at another property, so I knew his work, and he just put so much time and attention into not only the lawns, but making sure the parking lot's clean and doing the grounds cleanup spring and fall. And he's really good with detail, and it all helps make the whole place look good, you know, that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, no, thank you for taking the time.
Yeah,
it's great. And that, they're also friendly and clearly love being in that space. We haven't had any questions or comments yet. Anybody has any memories they want to share of the Somesville Garden or thoughts, go ahead and put those in the chat. But our final question for this part of the conversation is, you know, you've seen a lot of people out there on the landscape and enjoying the gardens. What is it that you hope they take with them away from the experience of being on the Somesville campus?
I mean, I just hope people continue to love coming to visit and, you know, take the time to stroll around and, you know, just take in the scenery and the beauty of it all. And I think that's what we get, that feedback, like, oh, we're so glad we stopped, you know, we've driven by here so many times. And you know, it's just to really enjoy it.
Perfect. Great. Well, in light of no questions coming through, I would just say thank you so much for all your time and your effort, and for that of your team. The gardens are stunning no matter what time of year you visit there. Even in the winter, that landscape is still just a beautiful space for some quiet reflection and a crazy island sometimes. So thank you for that, and for joining us on Chebacco Chats. This is a weekly series that we do every week, obviously, on Thursdays at 4:30. And so next week we have our collections manager, Patrick Calloway, who's going to be coming on to talk about MDI's movie theater history. So hopefully you can join that. Chebacco Chats are available to view on our website the week after they air. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at MDI History to be notified when we upload them. And if you're not a member of the Historical Society, we would encourage you to renew or become a new member by visiting our website at mdihistory.org. And we did have a couple questions come in. Are there historic photos at some point? So we don't, the Somesville campus, the main building of the museum is not historic. It was built in the 1960s. And I'm not sure what pictures we have for that. We were looking for older pictures of the landscape and the grounds for this talk, and we didn't find any that go back that early. We do have some pictures from when the bridge was installed in the 90s. And so some of those were included in the PowerPoint today. But the Selectmen's building is old. It's from the 1700s, but the other part of the campus is relatively new from the 60s. So it's sort of been a work in progress. And then we have another question. About 3 or 4 years ago, I saw an Ipecatus helleborn. I am not saying that right, I'm sure. Epipactus Helleborn next to the door, not native, but an orchid nonetheless. Don't know if you
Yes, if you're talking about a Helleborus, I don't remember a Helleborus being next to the door. There was almost like a wild orchid plant coming up. I wasn't familiar with it. We left it. We do leave things if they're pretty, and so maybe that's what you're talking about, but I didn't identify it as a Helleborus, but it might be some kind of orchid. And I think it was there for a few years. I don't think it's there anymore. It might not have made it through one of the winters.
Interesting. Huh. And then we have another question. Are heirloom plants natives as well?
I'm not really well versed on heirlooms, except for what I was able to share, that they're old. They go back generations. I think it's a very loose kind of term, except for the fact that they are, more open pollinated. So I would say, yeah, some natives are definitely heirlooms.
Great, thank you. Oh, sorry. I wish you could see these.
Yeah.
I'm not able to pronounce this. Not a Helleborus, might have been Ephemeral. Ephemeral. Oh, ephemeral.
Yeah,
Ephemeral.
which is a type of orchid. I'm not really sure. It was a plant that was there when I started. I think I do recall what you're talking about. And if I can find any information about it, I will get back.
Okay, I know Tom Hayward, and I
Let
can
Tom know. Yeah,
can forward
maybe
that.
some of my helpers remember, but I know it's not there anymore, and we didn't pull it out, so it might have just naturally just didn't make it through a winter, as I said earlier.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Great.
Thank you all for being here and for your questions and comments. I apologize that my Latin is not very good, but we got through it. And hopefully we'll see you all next week on November 9th at 4:30 for Patrick Calloway's very fun discussion from our collections on movie history. We have some thank yous coming in. So you are welcome. Thank you all very much. Enjoy.
Thank you. It was my honor.
One question. Oh, we had another thank you. Sorry. Great. Thank yous. Great talk. All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Raney.
Thank you all. Good night.